And so then our students then have been instructed and taught how to change their brain waves and in a meditative state move into those altered states of mind so that they can begin to get into the operating system where those subconscious programs exist. And so we've measured people in real time during meditation, and we know that our students can change their brain waves in 4 seconds or 5 seconds or 9 seconds or 12 seconds. They know how to regulate internal states. And I wanted to see during the meditative process what was going on in the inner workings of their mind and their brain. And so we've done thousands and thousands of scans in real time during meditation, and I can tell you that your brain doesn't change your brain. I can tell you that the personality doesn't change the personality, that the ego takes a long time to change the ego, that matter takes a long time to change matter. That when people are truly, truly present, there comes an elegant moment where they get beyond themselves, that they take their attention off their body, off of people and objects and things and places in their environment, and they forget about time. And that is the moment that they begin to become pure consciousness. That's the moment that consciousness becomes the epiphenomenon of matter. And so in the scans that we've done, in looking at people's brains in real time during meditation, we've seen very, very profound changes in everything from anxiety to depression to cyclic mood disorders to traumatic brain injuries, which hopefully I'll show you as we get going here. And I was interested in looking at what happens during the meditative process. So we've done a lot of real-time scans, and I can also tell you that when you analyze your life within some disturbing emotion, and those emotions are derived from the hormones of stress, that as long as you're living and feeling and thinking within those particular emotions, you're going to make your brain worse. We've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times in people. Because as you analyze your life within some disturbing emotion, and emotion is a record of the past, you're thinking in the past. And of course, the answer lies when you get beyond your past emotions. So we've also partnered with HeartMath Institute. We've done thousands and thousands and thousands of HRV, heart rate monitor scans to see how people can regulate elevated emotions and sustain those emotional states, because in our work we know that when you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you're changing your biology from living in the past to living in the future. And so we want our students to be able to create coherence in their brain, and of course we now know what it takes to do that. And we want them to create coherence in their heart. And when the heart begins to function in a more coherent manner, and a person can get in contact with elevated emotions like gratitude and inspiration and kindness and compassion and invincibility, that the heart starts beating more regularly, more rhythmically, in coherence, and it begins to create a measurable magnetic field. It's actually the strongest organ that produces that magnetic field. Well, that magnetic field is an energy, it's a frequency, and all frequency carries information. And so when the student lays their intent, their thought, on the carrier wave of that energy, they begin to send a new electromagnetic signature into the quantum field. So we want our students then to be able to sustain those coherent states in their brain and their heart. We've measured the energy of the room, the measured energy around people's bodies, the energy centers of their bodies. We've measured epigenetic changes in their urine, in their saliva. We've measured their immune responses, their cortisol levels, and recently we've measured 7,500 different gene regulations in a handful of students to see if they're actually regulating, signaling new genes right in real time during our event. So my passion then, of course, is demystifying the mystical so that people have within their reach all of the tools to begin to make measurable changes in their lives and in their health. And so when we started seeing healings and changes taking place right during our events, it was time to start doing the measurements. Now, the topic of this particular lecture has everything to do with becoming supernatural, because after a period of time, we noticed that people, when they went deep enough into a meditation, they seemed to go from a somebody to a nobody, from someone to no one, from something to nothing, from somewhere to nowhere, and from some time to no time. They became pure consciousness. And if they could linger as an awareness and learn how to become comfortable in the unknown, then all of a sudden they would start to feel more whole and less separate. And the unified field, the quantum field, is the field of information and energy that governs all the laws of nature. And you and I have all the biological and neurological machinery to connect to it. So then as we begin to unfold into this field as a consciousness, we start to feel more whole. We start to feel more oneness. We start to feel more connected. And our biology begins to reflect that, with coherence in the brain, coherence in the heart, the upregulation of genes. The biology is getting an upgrade. And so when we start venturing deeper into this field of information, we start to experience going from a somebody to nobody to everybody, from someone to no one to everyone, from something to nothing to everything, from somewhere to nowhere to everywhere, and from some time to no time to every time. And people start to have very profound mystical experiences. And in the mystical experience, the interesting thing about it is that they're having a full-on sensory experience without ever using their senses. And whatever's happening between their ears is more real than anything they've ever experienced in their life. So why is that important? Well, if you have a full-on sensory experience without using your senses, right now, if your senses were heightened by 25%, just say, for example, everything you were seeing, everything you were hearing, everything you were smelling, everything you were tasting, everything you were feeling. If your senses are heightened by 25%, so is your awareness. And if your awareness is heightened by 25%, then so is your consciousness. And if your consciousness is heightened by 25%, you can't have consciousness without having energy. So the energy in the brain should be heightened as well. And we started getting these measurements, and we have many, many students that have a profound mystical experience that's very subjective. And since experience enriches the circuitry in your brain, and experience produces an emotion, in 1 second, they begin to connect to this field, and in a sense, their past literally is washed away out of their body, because as the circuits begin to reorganize to reflect the experience, and the emotion of awe and wonder and freedom and love is being created in their body, that new emotion then from the inward experience a lot of times is greater in intensity than any past trauma, any past betrayal, any past shock that branded them emotionally to keep them anchored to the past. So my research has been all about uncovering that mystical experience, and I want to talk a little bit about some of that and show you some brain scans. So we think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. And 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So let's go to the first slide here, where it says how to change your reality. If you look here, if you're thinking the same thoughts, you're always going to make the same choices. As you make the same choices, you're always going to demonstrate the same behaviors. If you keep reproducing the same behaviors, you're going to keep creating the same experiences, and the same experiences are going to create the same feelings and the same emotions. Those same feelings and same emotions are going to drive your very same thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormones, and even your genes are going to be equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the principle of neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, keep making the same choices, keep demonstrating the same behaviors, keep creating the same experiences and producing the same feelings, you're going to begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature. And that finite signature, by the time we're 35 years old, becomes our identity. That is the box in the brain that we talk about, and it becomes the person's most common way that they behave, the way they think, and the way they feel. So now they're programmed. But if you give people new information and they study that information and you teach them how to do something with it, A new thought should lead to a new choice. A new choice should lead to a new behavior. A new behavior should create a new experience, and a new experience should create a new feeling or a new emotion, and that should inspire new thoughts. And of course, that's called evolution. So getting people from one state of mind into another state of mind is going to require them doing something. So then, the redundancy of thinking the same way, of making the same choices and feeling the same way, how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. That's the story. So look at the next slide. It says your personality creates your personal reality. So your personality is your state of being. So now, if we could just click on it again, it says, if you keep thinking the same old way, you keep acting the same old way, and you keep feeling the same old way, then your personality and your personal reality will be exactly the same. So then teaching people then how to change the way they think, begin to make new choices and demonstrate new actions and behaviors, create new experiences that then produce new feelings and new emotions, sooner or later their new personal reality will be a reflection of their new personality. And I think the biggest challenge is that most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. So there's a concept in neuroscience called metacognition. And because of the size of the frontal lobe, we can think about what we've been thinking about and change it. We can become aware of our unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And we can look at the emotions that have kept us anchored to the past and decide if those emotions belong in our future. And I think the biggest challenge is that many people are afraid to step into the unknown, and so they stay the same personality wishing for a new personal reality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So then to change our personal reality, we have to change our personality. So let's take a look at the next slide. This is the difficulty about change, because the hardwired patterns that are taking place in the brain and the emotional conditioning that takes place in the body becomes very comfortable, becomes very familiar, it becomes very predictable. And our old biology then is pretty much anchored in the past. The hardest part about true change and transformation is not making the same choice as you did the day before. So then the moment you say, I'm going to wake up early in the morning and I'm going to work out, or I'm going to do a meditation every morning, or I'm not going to eat sugar, or I don't know, you're going to go to bed early and wake up early. The moment you make that decision to do something like that, you better get ready, because to some degree you're going to feel uncomfortable. And that is the moment the body steps into the unknown. And so most people, when they step into that unknown, it feels uncomfortable, it feels unfamiliar, it feels uncertain, there's some unpredictability involved. And if they've conditioned their body to be the mind, the body starts sending signals back to the brain, and it starts saying to you, you can't do this, it's too hard, start tomorrow, you're not good enough, you're too much like your mother, this doesn't feel right. And that's the body beginning to activate circuits in the brain that cause us to think in the same old ways. So if we start thinking the same way, the same thought leads to the same choice. The same choice leads to the same behavior. The same behavior creates the same experience. The same experience produces the same emotion. And most people say, oh, this feels right. No, actually, that feels familiar. So going from the old self to the new self, stepping into that void, stepping into that unknown, is the biological, the neurological, the chemical, the hormonal, and even the genetic death of the old self. So people step into that unknown and they say, I can't predict my future. Well, the best way to predict your future is to create it, not in the known, but in the unknown, which means then, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate? The act of rehearsing your behaviors and planning your actions, when you're truly present and truly focused, the brain will not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. So then your brain begins to look like that behavior or that experience has already occurred. Now your brain's no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And of course, then the next question is, can I teach my body emotionally what this future is going to feel like before it's made manifest? Which means you don't wait for your healing to feel whole. You don't wait for your success to feel empowered. You don't wait for your wealth to feel abundant. You don't wait for your new relationship to feel love or the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect, waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when we feel better inside of us, we pay attention to whoever or whatever caused that. And that event is called a memory. The quantum model of reality is not about, cause and effect. It's about causing an effect. That means the moment you start feeling whole, your healing begins. The moment you start feeling worthy and free and abundant, your wealth is being drawn to you. The moment you start falling in love with yourself and falling in love with life, you'll create an equal. The moment you start feeling empowered and inspired, you're moving towards your success. And the moment you're in awe of life, you're going to have a mystical experience. Now that's causing an effect. So that's kind of turning the program around, because most of us are waiting for something outside of us to give us relief from our pain or our emptiness or our lack. And we teach our students how to emotionally embrace that future before it happens. So then why is the river of change so important? Because most people would rather hold on to their guilt than step into the unknown. They'd rather hold on to their fear than take a chance and possibility, because they can't predict that future. Well, if you're in the process of creation and being defined by a vision of the future, then it means you believe in your future more than you believe in your past. And you can teach people then how to really cross that river. So the fundamental question is, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like that future has already happened? The latest research in plasticity says it's absolutely possible. And can you select a new possibility, a new future potential that exists in the quantum field, and begin to emotionally embrace that future before it's made manifest to such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment, and you begin to signal new genes in new ways, so your body begins to change to look like that future has already occurred. Latest research in epigenetics says it's absolutely possible. So then think about this. If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the future has already happened, physical evidence in your brain and body, then it means then you get to relax, because now the event is going to find you. And it will come in a way that you least expect. And why does it come in a way that we least expect? Because if we can predict it, anticipate it, or expect it, it's nothing new. It has to surprise us. It has to catch us off guard. It has to prove to us that what we're doing inside of us is producing some effect outside of us. And we can make the correlation between the change we've made inside of us and the effect we've produced outside of us. We're going to pay attention to what we did, and we're going to do it again. And that's called human empowerment. So then students then are going from living as a victim in their life to becoming the creator of their life. So then if you're a victim to your life, then your personal reality is reminding you of who you are as a personality. To be a creator of your life, you understand that your personality then has to continuously change to begin to line up with a new personal reality. And we use so many different ways for people to arrive at that means, but I can tell you that it's absolutely possible. So next slide says information to transformation. We are interested in teaching people how to marry a clear intent by gathering the proper knowledge and information and making their brain work better in a more coherent way. And we also know that when people live by the hormones of stress, and stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis, that when you're living by the hormones of stress, of course, you narrow your attention on objects, on matter, on people and things, on your external environment, on your body, and you obsess about time, because that's where the danger is. So the primitive nervous system kicks in, the autonomic nervous system turns on the fight or flight system, and now your senses are heightened, you're defining reality as a materialist, and of course, you're looking for the danger in your outer world, and of course, your brain waves go into what's called a high beta pattern. And in that high aroused state, no new information can come into the nervous system that's not equal to the emotion the person has experienced. So the problem is you try to predict and control everything in your life when you're under stress, because stress means you can't predict or control an outcome. The moment you try to predict and control an outcome and you start shifting your attention from one person to one thing, to one problem, to one person, every one of those things has a neurological network assigned to it in the brain. So then as the brain is aroused, it's juiced up by those cocktail of stress hormones, and your brain is shifting from one thought to the next. The brain starts firing incoherently. And when the brain fires incoherently, you fire incoherently, or you're not thinking well. And so we teach people how to take their attention off of matter, off of objects, off of things, off their body, and begin to go from a narrow object-centered focus to more of an open focus. And as they begin to focus on nothing, on space, on energy, if they're no longer thinking and no longer analyzing, the brain waves begin to change. And the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But we teach people how to create coherent brains. And of course, we also teach them, and they understand that when they're resentful or they're impatient or they're frustrated, their heart also beats incoherently as well. So then, is it possible then to train them to regulate their autonomic nervous system by changing their brain waves and by changing their heart coherence, so then they can begin to transform themselves and transform matter? And that's kind of the model that we use.